Yeah, I get it, ladies and gentlemen. It's old news at this point. Jahmyr Gibbs to Detroit, DeAndre Swift to Philadelphia. But I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I really had no idea what to be doing with this running back. So I had to go through and do some in-depth research in an article on flockfantasy.com, try to get a concrete take on if we should be avoiding him, if we should be targeting him. I found the answer. I'm going to be telling you exactly what it is. But before we get into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, if you play Dynasty, if you want to get access to in-depth research like this, if you want to get access to my Dynasty rankings, which were just updated because of this research, or access to any of your favorite content creators, you can find that on flockfantasy.com. On flockfantasy.com, make sure you sign up with promo code FLOCK. That way you can get a free 2-day trial. Not only a free 2-day trial, but on top of this, you're going to be able to get 30% off any subscription and yours truly breaking down your Dynasty team with promo code FLOCK in particular. But let's go into DeAndre Swift here. And I want to go way back with Swift before we talk about anything. I want to establish a baseline because I'll be the first person to admit, whenever DeAndre Swift came out of Georgia, I was looking at a running back that I thought was going to be phenomenal. I mean, this is a player that checked every single box that we wanted to see. I mean, his BMI indicated, hell, he can handle a 3-down workload. I mean, he was a phenomenal pass catcher at Georgia, so we were looking at the fact that he was probably going to be able to play on a 3rd down. He was a good enough athlete where he was going to have success at the NFL level, and the Detroit Lions decided to take him at the very top of the 2nd round back in 2020. So naturally, as a prospect, I love DeAndre Swift, and I was all in on Swift, if I'm going to be honest with you. And if you're looking at our prospect model, yeah, Swift scored very well. I mean, he's there in a similar range of what you had with Jahmyr Gibbs this past season, Joe Mixon, CMC, Dalvin Cook. Of course, we have some guys that haven't worked out. We have Gibson, Akers on this model. We've already talked about why they are asterisks, and that Akers literally tears his Achilles, and Antonio Gibson is a former wide receiver. So, of course, when you plug him in our model, it's going to be a little wacky. But nonetheless, I love Swift as a prospect. Swift goes out early on in his NFL career and flashes some talent, right? I mean, with DeAndre Swift, he eventually rises to be the running back 2 in Dynasty. I mean, if you remember last offseason, through the entire offseason, if you go look at Keep Trade Cut, it was Jonathan Taylor, numero uno. Nobody was debating that. Then beyond there, you had, DeAndre Swift and Najee Harris fighting for number 2 and number 3 in overall Dynasty startup rankings, which looking back is crazy to see the fall that those guys have had, right? But DeAndre Swift was pretty much running back 2 all last offseason on Keep Trade Cut. Those are consensus rankings. I wish I could have been smart enough to say, no. DeAndre Swift's not a top 5 running back in Dynasty. Let's sell him everywhere we can. Sadly, I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I had DeAndre Swift as a top 3 running back in Dynasty. And to be honest with you, looking back, I don't really understand why. I think maybe we all got into a little bit of groupthink here because while DeAndre Swift definitely has his strengths, and we're going to be talking about those in just one second, there was a glaring red flag that you had with DeAndre Swift that we had seen, now play out through the first 3 years of his NFL career. DeAndre Swift cannot be used as a workhorse back. Now, I understand, yes, maybe you're going to sit here and go, well, Mason, we don't need him to turn into Derrick Henry, or, well, Mason, maybe it was just the coaching staff that decided not to give him 20 carries a game. Well, I don't even need to ask for 20 carries a game, right? I don't really care if you get us 20 carries a game if you're DeAndre Swift and you're going to be a phenomenal pass catcher. However, the lack of overall rushing volume is so glaring that I don't know how we overlooked it. If we are going back to his rookie season, and I understand he's a rookie, but still, DeAndre Swift had 7 games where he saw fewer than 10 carries. DeAndre Swift had 1 game where he saw more than 15. Now, I understand you're saying, well, Mason, he's a rookie, right? Really, what are we expecting with these rookies? Well, let's go to his 2nd year because this is the season that vaulted him up to be the number 2 overall running back in Dynasty. DeAndre Swift had 5 games with fewer than 10 carries and 1 game with more than 15. Yes, after this season, DeAndre Swift was vaulted up to being the number 2 running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Then going into 2022, this is when he was a top 3 guy for everybody. DeAndre Swift in 2022, 11 games with fewer than 10 carries, 0 games with more than 15. So like I said, I'm not asking DeAndre Swift to be Derrick Henry. I'm not asking DeAndre Swift to be prime Dalvin Cook. I don't need you to go out there and see 20 carries a game. But for his entire NFL career, DeAndre Swift has had 23 games with fewer than 10 carries. So no volume at all. And he has had 2 games with more than 15. This is horrible. I don't understand how not only myself, but the entire Dynasty community valued this guy as a top 3 overall asset. I mean, if we're going to go through and try to make excuses, it's very difficult to, right? Because with DeAndre Swift, I mean, maybe you want to make an argument Jamal Williams is some phenomenal running back. I'm not buying it. I mean, Aaron Jones was able to get volume with Jamal Williams in Green Bay. And if we're going back to DeAndre Swift, his rookie season, he's on a roster with a 35-year-old running back. Now, yes, it's Adrian Peterson, but at 35 years old, it's not like DeAndre Swift's been stuck in a backfield with elite level talents. It's not like DeAndre Swift was just playing with the coaching staff that hated him. DeAndre Swift has seen multiple coaching staffs through his entire stint in Detroit. So multiple coaching staffs have showed us that DeAndre Swift is not a running back that you give volume to, at least running the football. Now, I think it makes sense why this is the case. I mean, if you're going to go through and look at DeAndre Swift, the man can't stay healthy, regardless of if it's a shoulder sprain, a concussion. I mean, DeAndre Swift has missed games every single year of his NFL career. His rookie season, DeAndre Swift misses 3 games. His second year, DeAndre Swift misses 4 games. His third season, DeAndre Swift misses 3 games. So if we're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, right, where multiple coaching staffs show that this is not a guy we're giving a full workload to, where he doesn't have top-level competition in his own backfield. Yes, Jamal Williams, pretty good, but it's not like he's an elite back. And DeAndre Swift is dealing with a multitude of injuries with a lesser workload even. It just looks like DeAndre Swift can't handle a 3-down workload. It looks like DeAndre Swift can't see 15-plus carries a game. It's never going to happen. Now, the one thing that DeAndre Swift is phenomenal at, and the biggest strength on his profile, is DeAndre Swift's a great pass catcher, right? I mean, DeAndre Swift at Georgia and in the NFL has been one of the best passing down running backs in the league. DeAndre Swift, his rookie season, had about 4.5 targets a game. His second year, 6 targets a game. And his third season, 5 targets a game. So in general, DeAndre Swift's out there averaging slightly over 5 targets a game, right? And that's great, but we have to put a big time asterisk on this in that we cannot project that to occur going forward. Because if we look at the quarterbacks DeAndre Swift has played with in his NFL career, he's playing with those pocket passing guys. He's playing with those guys that cannot escape the pocket whenever it collapses. We know historically, if you want to chase a running back that could possibly lead the NFL in targets, you go with someone who's with the stationary quarterback. You go with Eckler when he has Phillip Rivers back there. I mean, hell, you go with DeAndre Swift when he has Jared Goff back there. And when you see those quarterbacks that can actually run the ball, you'll notice those guys don't throw to the running back. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at someone like Lamar Jackson, when the pocket collapses, his first reaction isn't, hell, let me go look for J.K. Dobbins out of the backfield, right? Your first reaction is, okay, I'm going to tug it and run. I'm going to go get a first down myself. But I wanted to prove this. I mean, we can't just sit here and say it and act like it's a fact without any numbers to back it up. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go and look at every quarterback since the year 2000 that has averaged 9 or more carries per game in a season and see their leading receiver at running back and see how many targets they're getting per game, right? So this is the best passing down running back on a team with the rushing quarterback. Now, sadly, I mean, I was expecting to see a decent amount of quarterbacks that we could be looking at. What's funny is, I guess quarterbacks did not run the ball for more than 9 carries a game. I mean, before 2019, we will look back to the year 2000, and we only had guys from 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. But nonetheless, we still have a decent amount of names to look at. Starting in 2019, Lamar Jackson, first guy to do it, right? And his leading rusher, Mark Ingram, 1.26 targets per game. So a little over 1 target per game for his leading receiving running back. 2020 had Lamar Jackson doing it again. J.K. Dobbins, his leading receiving running back in targets this year, 1.6 per game. Cam Newton, 4.4 with James White. Now, of course, James White is a phenomenal passing down running back. We'll look at White a little more in depth in a second. 2021, now we're going to have Jalen Hurts in the mix, right? This is when Jalen Hurts is starting. We know Jalen Hurts is almost just as good as Lamar Jackson running the football. You have Kenneth Gainwell as the leading receiver here with about 3.1 targets per game. Lamar had Devonta Freeman at 2.6. Then in 2022, we had three guys this past year. We had Hurts, Fields, Lamar, where their respective running backs were at 1.7 targets per game for Kenneth Walker in Philadelphia, 2.5 for David Montgomery in Chicago, and 2.1 for Kenyon Drake in Baltimore. So if we average all of the best receiving down running backs for rushing quarterbacks that we've seen since 2019, those guys are averaging about 2.4 targets per game, less than 2.5 targets a game. This goes to show that, yes, they are not targeting backs out of the backfield. I know what you're going to say. Well, Mason, you don't really know. DeAndre Swift's a much better passing down running back than any of these other guys. And I would love to buy into it, right? I would love to follow down that narrative and say, yeah, DeAndre Swift, he's going to be the guy to break the mold. But what I really want to do is I want to look at James White here, because James White's the perfect example of a running back that's a phenomenal passing down guy, or at least he was back in the day. And we got to see James White with both a rushing quarterback and a pocket passing option. We got to see what James White was like with Tom Brady versus Cam Newton, a very similar situation of what you're going to be getting with DeAndre Swift going from Jared Goff to Jalen Hurts in terms of the playing styles of the quarterback. Now, obviously, the quarterback talents are vastly different, but nonetheless, in the 2 seasons that you had from James White before Cam Newton came over to New England, you had James White averaging slightly over 7 targets a game. You had James White averaging about 45 receiving yards a game. And this is a large sample as well. We're looking at a 32-game sample that RotoViz gave us here. And if we're looking at the split that he had with Cam Newton, those targets fell from a little over 7 a game down to 4. Cut, by about 40%. The receiving yards per game went from about 45 to 26. So the receiving down usage craters with that rushing quarterback, as we've demonstrated with, a handful of guys at this point. So if we were looking at some hard truths, going back to the fact that DeAndre Swift through his NFL career has seen 23 games with fewer than 10 carries, 2 games with more than 15. So he's not going to be running the ball with volume. He's going to an offense where the quarterback's not going to be checking the ball down a ton because the quarterback can run it himself. DeAndre Swift's going to get squeezed. These are the 2 hard truths that we have to deal with. And if we're going to try to project out with DeAndre Swift, if you want him to be an elite running back in fantasy this next year, you're going to need a couple things. One, you are going to need an extreme level of efficiency, which I will say definitely possible in Philadelphia. With how good this Philadelphia Eagles offense is, top to bottom, it wouldn't be too surprising for DeAndre Swift to be a top 5 running back in the NFL in yards per carry. Not only are you going to need an elite level of efficiency, but at the same time, you are going to need some crazy touchdown volume. And I don't know how likely this is, considering that Jalen Hurts will take his own rushing touchdowns as well. So with all this research, I've had to move DeAndre Swift down our rankings. I'm sure y'all saw this on flockfantasy.com already, but I had him at 76. I'm going to move him down to about 88 in our startup rankings. If we're going to go and look at keep, trade, cut for a comparison, we actually have Zay Flowers, J.K. Dobbins, Jared Goff, Trey Lance, Dallas Goedert, all behind DeAndre Swift on keep, trade, cut. But to be honest with you, if you look at flockfantasy.com to pull up my rankings, I'd rather have every single one of those players over DeAndre Swift. Give me Zay Flowers, aka the 109. If I can sell DeAndre Swift for the 109 in a 12-team Superflex league, buy Swift. If I can sell him for Dobbins, buy Swift. If I can sell him for Goff, Lance, Goddard, I'm telling him goodbye. But I'm sorry to say this. I was really wanting to come away with this research saying, okay, I'm actually moving DeAndre Swift up my rankings. It's just difficult to be too bullish on him in this situation. But please let me know what you're thinking. Of course, feel free to go down to the comment section. Tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm going to end up following the Detroit Lions. I'm going to end up selling DeAndre Swift And if you enjoyed this video, drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, if you want to get access to my in-depth research, the in-depth research of all your favorite fantasy football creators, and on top of this, all of our rankings, you can find a link to flockfantasy.com in the comment section and the description. Sign up to flockfantasy.com with promo code FLOCK, and you're going to get 30% off any subscription. And with promo code FLOCK, you are also going to get yours truly breaking down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you and really hope you have a great day.